Americano en Washington rompe a llorar por Bukele. Esta fue la reacción de un hombre estadounidense que escuchó lo que decía Nayib Bukele en el CPAC de Washington. El americano se vio bastante emocionado durante una entrevista y no pudo contener sus lágrimas. Bienvenidos a Alfa Producciones. Si te gustaría saber más de esta información, te invito a que te quedes viendo. Pero antes dale me gusta y suscríbete, activando las notificaciones para no perderte de ninguna nueva noticia. Americano no pudo contener sus lágrimas tras escuchar la emoción de las palabras de Nayib Bukele. Este hombre estadounidense llamado Melk Half habló acerca del discurso del presidente Nayib Bukele y lo que le conmovió todo lo que dijo. Es por eso que ahora escucharemos el discurso del mandatario salvadoreño, para que lo entiendas mejor.
I'm here to tell you that in El Salvador, it's already dead. But if you want globalism to die here too, you must be willing to unapologetically fight against everything and everyone that stands for it. Fight for your freedoms. Fight for your rights. The next president of the United States must not only win an election, he must have the vision, the will, and the courage to do whatever it takes. And above all, he must be able to identify the underlying forces that will conspire against him. These dark forces are already taking over your country. You may not see it yet, but it's already happening. You don't see it as clearly because people are designed to see linear changes, not exponential ones. We don't always recognize how fast a problem can multiply and spiral out of control. The problem is much like the metaphor of the boiling frog. Once the water boils, it's already too late. People fail to see these things. It's our nature. Just like the frog, people become complacent and they don't realize how bad things are getting until it's too late. While I know, of course, El Salvador is a lot smaller country, setting aside the differences, there's a similarity with what is happening here in the United States. We also had many apparently isolated problems in the 60s and the 70s. And we failed to realize as a country the severity of them until it became a civil war. By the time we reacted, it was already too late. We were already boiled like the frog. And it took us 50 years, 2 wars, 250,000 lives, and a third of our population displaced, and a near miracle to get our country back.
Thank you.
As your friend, I want to issue this warning so you don't make the same mistakes we did in the 60s and the 70s. It is not easy to pull yourself back once you're in boiling water. In fact, all the experts said it was impossible. And besides, you don't want to wait 50 years and maybe hope for a miracle to get out of hell. You can still jump before the water boils. Some might say I'm exaggerating, but we can clearly see the signs of a declining society because our own hit rock bottom decades ago. It's like when we see someone getting sick. First, it's maybe just stomachache, or a headache, or a small fever. But if you don't deal with the disease, it will only get worse, and then it may be too late. Even after our first war in El Salvador, we failed again to look into the signs of the second civil war that was coming, the gang war. After 1 million people fled the first war, a lot of them came to live in ghettos here in the United States, where the gangs were formed. When former President Clinton deported a lot of those gang members without telling us they were gang members, they were criminals. They roamed free and recruited young people thousands of young Salvadorans to join the gangs. At first, they seemed like petty criminals, but they began to change and transform until they became the unscrupulous terrorists that we know today. Most of them even perform satanic rituals, and this has been well documented. The government back then didn't deal with the disease, nor did the next administration, nor did the ones after that. The disease that had begun with mild symptoms got worse and worse. It became a cancer that seemed incurable. We are already seeing these symptoms in the United States. Big cities in decline like Baltimore, Portland, New York, just to name a few. Places where crime and drugs have become the daily norm, and even accepted and promoted by the government. How many young people have you lost to the streets of Philadelphia or San Francisco, to fentanyl? Did we see these apocalyptic sights 15, 10, 5 years ago? Can you imagine how it will be in the next 5, 10, or 15 years? The same thing was happening in El Salvador. In the span of less than a decade, gangs took control of all the country and our society. They evolved into a parallel government, controlling elections and even political parties. Every aspect of the daily life of most people was controlled by the gangs. Murder capital of the world is a tragic title to hold. Getting rid of that was the bare minimum we had to achieve in order to even start thinking about rebuilding our country. But jumping out of the water when it's already boiling is an almost impossible feat. You are not there yet. And believe me, you don't want to be.
Ahora escuchemos las palabras de Mel Half, que no aguanta la emoción y el llanto de haber escuchado las palabras del presidente salvadoreño.
It was all You feel emotional about what he said. It was all truth. Everything is truth. What's going on right now in America, he knows because it happened in El Salvador also. So he understands us, and we understand him in El Salvador. I was really blessed because when he came off stage, he came around the stage, and I was right there. He bent down, and he shook my hand, and we held hands. And I started to get very emotional because...
And I feel a sort of connection with him?
Well, the connection is that at our hotel, there's 5 El Salvadorian women who work in the kitchen. I got to know them in the last day or two, and they heard about Presidente Bukele going to be speaking, and they just were so happy and so grateful to him. They said, please tell him if you meet him, we love him. And I was able to do that, to tell him that story. And they said, these 5 women said, now we feel it's safe for us to go back to our country. So that was the message I gave him. And he just kept holding my hand because I think he understood their passion, not mine. It came from God, not from me.
That's so wonderful. What's your name?
My name's Mel Haft.
Ahí lo hemos escuchado, las palabras del americano, y nos transmitió su emoción al escuchar a Nayib Bukele. Sin dudas, es increíble lo que está logrando el presidente salvadoreño, con el arduo trabajo que está haciendo por su país, con sus valores, sentido común y su ética, que es capaz de traspasar cualquier barrera y frontera para llegar al corazón de las personas. Hasta aquí ha llegado este video, pero no olvides dejarme en los comentarios qué opinas, qué te parecieron las palabras del estadounidense. No olvides dejar tu me gusta para ver más videos como este. Suscríbete para no perderte de ninguna nueva noticia.